this way, and I think we have Peg. Please come on in. So again, what you will see here is another instance of how customer analytics work with another organization. And in the spirit of, again, showing diversity, the organization that we work with, as Peg told me, I think this is a wonderful pitch, it's a 100-year-old startup. It's actually the Barnes Foundation. It's a museum out here in Philadelphia. If you have never been there, it's an amazing place to go to and check out. It's a personal collection of Dr. Barnes.
It is.
And so Peg and his team and her team and the Wharton team, we again started thinking about what would be questions that, for example, a nonprofit would be interested in. Let's think about those questions. So when Peg came around and said, well, the number one question for us is, what is our demand going to be like? What are the admissions like? You know, are members coming in? How long are they staying? All of those things. The reason I bring this up is many questions, whether you're nonprofit, whether you're for-profit, wherever you're operating in, is questions that are very, very similar. So again, what you see here is analytics is indeed forming the backbone of many different organizations, whether it's a nonprofit like the Barnes Foundation or a for-profit and many of those other things. So without further ado, Peg is going to talk a little bit about the Barnes Foundation, the kinds of challenge that we had, and then we'll have the student kind of actually beaming in. I think it's a pre-recorded video where she's going to talk a little bit about how their team went about doing the challenge. Thank you, Peg.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. The picture that you see behind me is a picture of the Barnes Foundation's building, which is located at 20th and the Benjamin Franklin Parkway in Philadelphia. This month we are celebrating our 7th anniversary in this building. The collection was moved in 2012, well actually starting in 2011, from its former home, which was in Marion, Pennsylvania, in a very residential area. I don't have the click, oh, sorry. I was going to say the slide advancer is on the other side of the room. So the move to the Parkway was not just about a new building. It was really about a complete revolutionary change to the institution. We've welcomed 1.8 million visitors since our opening in 2012. That's about 3 times our annual visitation from when we were in Marion. So we went from about 65,000 visitors a year in a normal year to about 200 to 250,000 visitors in a year. We have, very fortunately, a wonderful membership base. We have 16,000 member households. That's up from 300 member households prior to our move. And as you might imagine, not only have we tripled our visitation, we've tripled our budget, and we've tripled our staff. At the core of the Barnes, we're a learning institution. On the left, yes, on the left, is a portrait of our founder, Dr. Albert Barnes. He is a lifelong Philadelphian, or was a lifelong Philadelphian, a graduate of Central High School, and also of the University of Pennsylvania. Yay, Penn. But he's a Kensington native, and for those of you who know the city, Kensington was not always the hip, cool neighborhood that it is now. And he is a sort of living testament to education having the power to change lives. And he believed that, certainly was evidence of that, and really believed in the power of art to change people's lives. He's not a formally trained MFA, Master of Fine Arts. He actually was a formally trained doctor, and then a chemist. And part of his educational practice was really about visual literacy and about looking at painting. A lot of you may have read about slow looking. That's the new buzzword in museum visitation, where you go and you stare at a painting for a really long time. Barnes was sort of the precursor of slow looking. And we think that the tenets of visual literacy are, if not as relevant, they're probably more relevant today in a world that is increasingly visual. We continue his legacy through, and you'll see on the right, we do what we call inquiry-based learning and conversational learning in the galleries. We have the young lady who has the iPad in her hand is a member of our art team. We do pop-up talks for our guests. We just introduced a mobile guide where people can focus on a painting, and it will deliver to your smartphone information about the painting. So all of these things are progresses that we're making. The other thing that the move did, I think, was really expand our mission to welcome a population that's representative of the city of Philadelphia in age, in ethnicity, and in terms of economic means. to see the collection as well as special exhibitions. Now, our collection contains works from a variety of genres, including painting, sculpture, furniture, decorative arts, metalwork, and antiquities. And so Barnes was really focused on the unique core values of each of those kinds of artwork and how they related to each other and how they reflected the best in human craft. We have a large collection of Impressionist, Post-Impressionist, and early modern paintings, probably, arguably, we think, the best one in the world. There are 181 Renoirs in the collection, 69 Cézannes, 57 Matisses, and the list goes on and on. If you have not visited, we really would encourage you to do so. It's a great place. We also are welcoming guests to an expanded array of public programs which celebrate the diversity of the city and the diversity of our collections. So all that news sounds pretty great, right? So what's the problem, and what's the issue that we presented to the team? So we, like Evite, are a pretty small institution. We have about 95 full-time employees. Data is not our first language. But as we have grown into our new home, we have seen our visitation drop. That happens a lot in institutions where you build something new. The team coined it the novelty effect. You'll hear them talk about the novelty effect a little bit later in the presentation. So what we're trying to understand is what does a steady state level of visitation for the Barnes and attendant revenue look like? We are committed to achieving a balanced budget each year, and as a result of that, we're very dependent on both admissions revenue and annual fundraising to achieve our balanced budget. We are a little undercapitalized in relation to some of our peers. We have we have an endowment that supports about 17% of our operating budget. So we asked the team for a lot of stuff, and you'll see we wanted to talk about pricing, and was our pricing part of the reason for this drop in attendance? We wanted to be able to project revenue more accurately, because being the guy who has to stand in front of the board and say, well, we missed our revenue projection this month by X thousands of dollars, you want to be able to do a better job with that. We wanted to understand our guests' visitation and attendance behavior, and we wanted to think about products and offers that would make visitation to the Barnes very attractive. So we presented the group with that list of questions, and then they reminded us that the project was 4 weeks long, and maybe we were being a little ambitious. So we settled on the team constructing a predictive model to forecast visitation and related revenue. And my friend Catherine Bache, oh sorry, I'm pressing the wrong button, who is there as a member of the team, and Catherine's going to describe what the project was, what the team did, and then I'll come back and tell you actually how it's working out.
Hi, my name is Catherine Bache, and I was an analyst for Wharton Customer Analytics Initiative's Accelerator Challenge, working on the Barnes Foundation team. The Barnes Foundation asked my team to help them anticipate their attendance. We did this by creating models for both non-members and members, testing several demand drivers. Today, I'm going to be talking about the process of creating these models and our final deliverable for the Barnes Foundation. Barnes Foundation has a long and interesting history, but has only been in Philadelphia since 2012, so we only had about 6 years of data to work with. The initial time when they first came to Philadelphia, we saw a novelty effect where people were really excited about this new attraction, this new museum, and they wanted to come see the art. After this first novelty effect, the attendance had steadily decreased a little bit over time, so we wanted to understand why. Our final deliverable was this model that the Barnes Foundation could easily implement into their current reporting templates and requires no additional work to use and update. We created this deliverable and final models by first defining the model structure, then hypothesizing demand drivers, and lastly, selecting the model. To define the structure of the model, we took a couple different steps to make some key decisions. The first decision that we made was to separate non-members and members and free visitors, since these two categories of people respond differently to effects that the Barnes has, like price, for example. Non-members respond heavily to price, while members and free attendees do not. We also wanted to see if we wanted to base our model on a quarterly time step or a monthly time step. And we ended up deciding to use a quarterly time step, since this allowed the data to be more smooth and it could help show trends more easily. Moving on to the second step of hypothesizing demand drivers, we looked at three categories of effects that might have an impact on demand and attendance. The first one is Barnes-specific actions like changes in price and special events. The second one is peer actions, so what are competitors or other museums doing? And lastly, macro factors like seasonality. Looking at the effects of Barnes-specific actions, we found that special exhibits and events do have a meaningful effect on attendance. So for non-members, exhibits really have a high impact, and for members and free attendees, these special member-only events have an impact on attendance. We also observed an inverse relationship between price and attendance, which makes sense and is intuitive economically. When the price increases, attendance decreases. Then we looked at what competitors or other museums are doing, and we ended up seeing that while these competitors do share seasonal peaks and troughs, there's not a super strong or clear relationship between other museums and the Barnes Foundation attendance. We then looked at macro factors and found that seasonality did in fact have a really strong effect, especially for non-members. You can see in this graph here on the left that the peaks and troughs in non-member attendance are really highly correlated with seasonality. And there's also a modest effect for member attendance as well. Once we had looked at all of our long list of demand drivers and we saw which ones actually had an effect on the Barnes Foundation's attendance, we then had a short list of demand drivers, and we tested these for statistical robustness, and we used backtest performance and made sure that the drivers were actionable and could have stability in the model. In our final model, you can see that it actually is pretty accurate in predicting and understanding Barnes Foundation attendance. So the actual attendance you see in red, the red line, is really close to the blue line, which was our model's predicted attendance. This model has a few implications for the Barnes Foundation, one being that in a scenario where the Barnes Foundation keeps doing what they're doing and does nothing new, we will see non-member attendance continue to decline around 10% year on year. But we also see that small reductions in price can stabilize non-member attendance while remaining revenue neutral. And so lastly, I just want to leave you with this is our final deliverable that we gave to the Barnes Foundation, and they've been able to implement it in their current reporting templates and structures, and they have been able to successfully use it in their budgeting and planning. Thank you.
Yay, Catherine! So now here's the rest of the story. So we received the model in December of 2018, and we were in the midst of, we had actually prepared our budget for 2019. We filled in the third quarter actuals, and we tested the model against the fourth quarter forecast for 2018, and here's what we found. Actual attendance was approximately 2% below what the model predicted, but that's pretty darn good where I come from. And actual revenue was about 97%, about 3% below what the model predicted. What we are finding is that incremental reductions in price do result in incremental revenue. So you can see the model our actual per ticket in the fourth quarter was 23, and so the price went down. Our prediction was 866. We actually ended up at 903. So we are seeing that there's an impact in reducing price to increase demand. We then looked at the first quarter budget that we had already put together, and we found that the model's prediction, we sort of split the difference between what the model predicted and what we predicted ourselves. So I think there's a bit of a lesson in that, which is that the model is an element of what you, of how you put your forecast together. So you have to bring your thinking with it, you have to bring your experience to it, but you also have to pay attention to what the model is telling you. The other outcomes that we have had, we have offered additional promotional pricing. We have not gone to implementing a straight reduction in our base price. We actually have done another survey where we found that people in Philadelphia look for a deal as opposed to looking for a lower base price. So the fact that you offer a promotion is more attractive to the general consumer than it is whether your base price is $25 or $20. We have really redoubled our efforts on data collection to address all of the other questions that we put to the team that we don't have answers for yet. And we are hoping to have an intern this summer to help us with that, and also we are trying to work with the Wharton Fellows program in the fall to answer more of these questions. Obviously, we will have more data over time. We only have so many quarters worth of data right now, and I think that will help to improve these outcomes. I have to express sort of my gratitude to the team at WCAI and also the student team. I think they really made us think about data and analytics in a very different way, and it really has sort of stepped up the conversation about how we manage these things internally, and I see I'm over time. So I'm going to leave it at that, and then and thank you for your attention, and thank you to the WCAI team. We're so grateful.
Thank you, Peg. This was wonderful. Now, a couple of things that you mentioned, I wanted to just follow up as well.
Yep.
Now, when you said, for example, this was a wonderful, short project, but it has brought about lots of conversations at the Bounce Foundation. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I think we've focused, I would say, the last year or two on gathering demographic information about our customers. We do it at a lot of our events. We do a long-form survey. I think the thing that we have not been able to do is I'm going to call it harvest the data that's within our customer database and understand what helps our customers to tick, what makes them come, do they come repeatedly, how do we find those customers to then cultivate them into members and to donors and to really increase their loyalty to the institution. So I think that's the next place that we really need to harvest it. But I think that the fact that we were able to generate a good outcome in a really short period of time with this project really encouraged us and emboldened us to ask those questions in a different way. And I think the team here has been terrific in terms of talking to us about how we can work more together.
Wonderful. And again, just to kind of make sure we're all on the same page, the Bounce Foundation, the way we interacted with them was through something we call analytics accelerators. So imagine a team of students, Catherine being one of them, but a very diverse set of students, undergrads, PhDs, for example, masters of data science, coming together, working, tirelessly over 4 to 5 weeks, and coming back and giving back actionable recommendations. So a short period of time, very, very clear problem, the data coming along with it, and coming back together to kind of give back to the company, in this case, the Bounce Foundation. In another case, we actually had a law firm coming back and talking to us about how can we mine some of the data that they have. So lots of diversity, both in terms of the type of people that we work with, firms, and the type of students that kind of come along and be attracted to some of these opportunities. So some of the questions that have come up are you willing to run advertising and pricing experiments?
We are. I'm always willing to run an advertising experiment. I'm less willing to run a pricing experiment. It's scary when you are as dependent on earned revenue as we are to say, oh, we're going to reduce the ticket price $5 and see what happens. I think the way that we're thinking about doing that is really through different promotions. We're doing a promotion this summer with the PMA, Philadelphia Museum of Art, where we are selling a combined ticket and it provides a discount to both institutions. Let's see how that goes. We're increasing our visibility at the Independence Visitor Center because that's really a hub for a lot of tourist visitors, and we're going to sell those same tickets there. So I think we're more willing to think about promotional pricing. We did a focus group and a survey around pricing this past spring, and really found that people love a bargain, and they think about, which amazed me, they didn't think about where they wanted to go and figure out how to get the best deal. They looked for what the best deal was and then made a decision about where they were going to go. And that was very counterintuitive and sort of an aha moment for us. So I think we are thinking hard about both of those things.
Wonderful. And I think this is a very interesting one, and I'm sure you kind of thought about it. How did you manage the expectations of your board while thinking about this model and implementing it?
Well, managing board expectations is like should be a course in undergraduate studies in graduate school. I think I will give our board a ton of credit. They are, to a person, incredibly supportive of the institution, both in terms of time and talent and treasure, and each to their own capacity. So I think they have been very supportive of us as we have gone on this journey. I think for the board, just letting them know that you're thinking about this problem and you're doing something about it, and whatever actions you're taking that you're trying to resolve this, I think is enough. And I think communication can't be underestimated. But, and I thought about it this morning in someone's talk, it's so important to be able to, I think as Charles said, explain it like you're explaining it to your grandma. You know, the challenge for finance people, and I'm one, so I'm allowed to say this, is to be able to express what you're doing in a way that your grandma or grandpa understands it. And I think that communication line is really, really important. And so I think our board, you know, have they been a little impatient about the reduction in revenue? Yes. Did they know it was coming? Yes. We never said it was going to be like it was the first year for every year of our history. But when the reality hits, you know, you have a choice, you know, and our board is very insistent on a balanced budget. That is sort of the number one priority. So you have to adjust programming, you have to rev up your fundraising, you have to do what you can do, you know, and it makes for some hard decisions.
Absolutely. I'm seeing there are a lot more questions, but we are running out of time. So I want to make sure, first, thank you, Peg. Thank you, the Barnes Foundation. And Peg will be here during lunch, I think, so we can kind of have more conversations with her during lunchtime. Sorry, I couldn't get to all your questions, but there is a lot more time to kind of hopefully have conversations with Peg.
Terrific. Thanks so much.
Thank you much.